And we are live with Kirk Stefford. Kirk, how are you?
I'm really well, Jazz. It's been what about now? Middle of the week. It's been a good week.
Absolutely, Kirk. Lovely to have you again. And
Thank
PM
you.
Coach, one of the great organizations helping property managers and real estate companies across the country. I've heard you were in Brizzy. Were you in Queensland
Um,
last week?
Gold Coast. I it was part recreation, but also there was some business wound into that as well. I caught up with a couple of people up there that I've done some work for before and will continue to do work with, and also with my Australian lead on a psychometric profiling platform that I'm bringing in as a Victorian partner. So it was a very productive trip, and there was a music festival up there, the Blues Fest. Was it Blues on Broadbeach? So there you go. There's a shout out to the organisers there. Well, I was there for 5 days, back in Melbourne for a day, back on a plane to Sydney to speak at a conference last Thursday, and then back that night. And I'll tell you what, my bed had never looked so good on Thursday night.
I can imagine. And how was the weather out there?
Better than Melbourne. It was warmer, particularly Gold Coast was certainly warmer during the day. The nights weren't greatly different. It was down to 8 or 9 degrees during the evening and the night time. So I'm glad I took a warm jacket with me, mate, because it was.
As you said, better than Melbourne. There's no more explanation needed.
Well, look, I was walking on the beach most day for a couple of hours first thing in the morning. It's terrible.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Kirk, what's new in the industry? Yeah, pretty good. We had a busy week leading up to today. Like, it's pretty good. Getting a lot of appraisals, getting a lot of rentals coming in as well, and we're focusing really actively on educating our clients. And again, today's session is no different. It's all about educating our community, educating our landlords and landlords in general as well, or rental providers. Keep forgetting, they're now called rental providers.
Yes. Every time I run a training session, I revert back. And as I say to people, look, you'll have to excuse me not using the actual correct legal terminology as it is now. I've been in this industry since dinosaurs roamed the earth, so I still call them landlords and tenants.
Exactly.
I ran a session this morning.
I met a lot of landlords last week as well, and I'm meeting a couple tonight as well. I met some landlords or rental providers last week, and they are following a lot of people, including yourself as well, on social, and they have a different view on what's exactly happening with the changes, and not many people are impressed. But again, that's a different topic, though. Today's conversation is about again one case on hand that we are working in within our agency. Again, we're working together on it. The second aspect, once we have a further discussion on this, we'll talk about the latest topic of the town, which is rental caps and the land taxes, or the COVID debt relief.
Yeah. There's a lot of conversation around that at the moment. I'd say that look, every conversation I have has a component of that in it at some point.
Exactly. So, it's making me think what's going to happen. There's no right or wrong answer. It'll be sit tight and observe a kind of a situation where rental providers, interest rates are going up, and they are up, depending on when rental caps would come in, depending on when they start the further land taxes, or perhaps the debt levy, COVID debt levy, what they call it, how much impact financially it'll put on a rental provider. And on top of that, are they going through existing issues with their renter? Is there going to be more stock on the market for sale? And or plus, would it then change the market dynamics? Whereas right now stock levels are quite low, and the market's still sustaining well. It's not bad in our part of the town. That makes me question, would there be more stock, and what effect would that have? Would it be ideal as a real estate company who does sales as well? Shall I be excited from a business point of view that there'll be more listings in the market, or shall I be concerned?
from a business owner's point of view, I think the stock levels will increase.
Mm.
And you've got to look at it at the moment. Year on year, I think historically we've had somewhere between I think 10 and 12% of rental stock that turns over, that comes to the market as a sales property. What they're seeing, and the numbers that I've seen, I'm a bit rusty because I haven't looked at them for a little while. I probably think it would be about a month and a half since I looked at them. We're seeing an uptick on that to about 15% of properties that are ex-rental stock that are now coming to market or have come to market over a period of time.
Yeah.
We're facing a supply shortage of property in the market as it is, because I think a lot of vendors are listening to the media and going, well, now's not a good time to sell because prices have fallen. Then on the other side of that, you've still got a fair bit of demand there. So it's actually underpinning prices. The prices aren't falling as far as they perhaps could or should have in any other normal situation. Because if you've taken the demand out of the market as well, then supply's got to, and it's economics 101. So the price of supply rises to meet the level at which demand will support it.
Correct.
The same holds with rental figures, with rental prices as well. What we're seeing at the moment is that there is enough demand from buyers in the marketplace, and predominantly they're home owner buyers, so they're going to occupy it themselves.
Correct.
So they're soaking up whatever supply is there and increasing the pressure on it to the extent that prices have stabilised. In some cases, look, there are still runaway results being achieved at auctions in certain situations, or expectations are being exceeded even in a private sale.
Correct.
The challenge, though, is going to arise when we start to see that demand abate. I don't know when that's going to be. In fact, I don't even know whether it's going to happen. But if that demand starts to ease back as a tide rises and falls, if that starts to ease back, we may start to see a bit of a downward shift on prices again. Yeah. And that in itself will re-perpetuate the demand. Now, the problem with a lot of the rental stock going to homeowners is that the ABS stats, I think it was the last census, showed that on average, a rental property contains 2.8 people. This is across Australia. This isn't just Melbourne-based. It's not just Point Cook, one suburb. It's Australia. The average owner-occupied property houses 1.8 people. So for every rental property that comes out of the market and gets bought by an owner-occupier, we're displacing one person.
Correct.
So almost 1/3 of the renters are being displaced. They've got to go somewhere.
Correct.
And the problem with that is that we've got a lot of people who are coming out post-COVID, coming out and forming their own households again as well. I think the number I saw today was 130,000. That was from an article by Tony Richards in the Australian Financial Review a couple of days ago. 130,000 people coming out of other accommodation back into the rental market creates pressure. Now, that's a national figure. It's not just Victorian. It's not just Melbourne.
Or in suburbs, correct. Yeah,
exactly. So let's say that we took up a fifth of that because we're a populous state, maybe more. So that's still 100. Let's call it 25,000 people. Got to find rental accommodation. There's a medium. And
also, even hypothetically saying, and this has happened in our suburb when the market started going up in 2020, 2021. It wasn't as crazy as southeastern suburbs. However, it slowly brought the pressure onto the buyer or buyers. If they're watching the media, media plays a big role. And when media starts broadcasting about either rental crisis or perhaps talk about the auction clearance rates going up, property selling for this price and markets set to go up further, Psychologically, it actually affects a person in any different suburb as well. And we saw the change that started coming in, even though we had only 10 buyers coming to the open home, there were 9 offers
Yep.
on the table. So what you're saying is, if the demand is increasing in rentals, we could potentially see a lot more, without using the word what we were discussing before, rental crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You reckon there'll be more demand moving down the line, or?
I would think that if you had a rental property, you should be very happy that the supply is diminishing, because what you're going to find is that your rental income will increase.
There you go.
Because it's, again, we go back to what I said before about the price of supply rising to meet the level at which demand supports it.
That's really good.
Yeah, so really, you'd be pretty happy about that. The problem with increases in rents is that it's not always necessarily a good thing.
So shouldn't that actually encourage? Sorry to cut you there.
That's right.
It should encourage a lot of people who are on the fence, thinking of buying investment, but worried about interest rates at the moment. It's actually golden time for them to get into a market to buy investment property right now.
Yeah, that's right. Because their return is actually going to be underpinned for, well, I won't say forever, but I would say the foreseeable future. Certainly the next 3 to 5 years, until something is done on the supply side, you're going to find that rents are going to continue to increase.
Yeah.
And that, as I said, that's a good thing if you're a property investor, because you're assured that your return is going to be at a level that will help you support all the outgoings on the property. And it's never a case that it's designed to meet them all. That's not a realistic way of looking at rental income, because the essence of properties is that they have a twofold, or it's a double-edged. You've got two streams from. You've got the rental income, but you've also got the increase in capital value.
Correct.
So you've got dual purpose for wanting to invest.
There you go.
The thing is with an increase in prices, and I sort of mentioned a minute ago that it's not necessarily always a good thing to have it. It's that it contributes greatly to the cost of living. So if your cost of living, i.e. inflation, continues to increase, well, the central bank, the Reserve Bank, doesn't have many financial levers at its disposal. So they will most likely continue to look at interest rates and go, well, we need to keep lifting these. So it's going to be this cycle where we've got to come back to normality at some stage and get a balance in it. Where and how that happens, I don't know. My crystal ball broke eons ago. So
it's like chasing the tail. Just keep going in circles. It's like chasing the tail, going in circles.
Exactly. And it becomes then a real cycle of one lifts, the other lifts, one lifts, the other lifts, and at some point, and I've likened these sorts of situations before to trying to blow up a balloon. You put too much air into the balloon, it pops.
Yeah. And on that, I guess what something comes to my mind is, yes, rents are going up. What's your message to the rental providers who would like to increase the rent by a lot more than it's fair to increase?
Well, I think you've just nailed it there. I think the thing is you've got to be fair, because there is an aspect in economy of fairness. If and I'm presuming in this situation you're talking about a property where there's an existing tenant in it. There's a cost involved in turning the tenancy over. There's going to be a vacancy period. There are generally some repairs that come out of it with the new tenancy, because the things that a longer term tenant would have just tolerated, all of a sudden the new tenant comes in and says, well, that's not right, this isn't right, and that's not working the way that it should. So there's all these, there'll be a list, almost a shopping list of little bits and pieces that need doing. So and there's a cost there. Plus you've also got the fees to take into account. Now, it may be that the increase in income is enough to offset that. But if you've got a tenant in a property that's been there long term, I think there's a show of good faith in that. that needs to come into it because of those costs, if nothing else, but also because if they're a good tenant, you want to keep them.
Correct.
You want to give them some sort of incentive to stay, not an encouragement to leave. And I've used that exact terminology when I've been talking to landlords of my own over the years. Why would you want to price a good tenant out of your property?
Exactly. At a risk of what? I mean, yes, you're right. One, you'll have expenses, letting fee, marketing again, vacancy period as well. And plus, in my opinion, there's also a risk of finding a not so great tenant.
Yep, that's right. Exactly. And you don't know what a tenant is actually like. You don't know what the quality of that tenant is until you get to the time of the bond refund.
Correct.
At the other end of the tenancy. They can be great all the way through the tenancy. Rents are on time, inspections look good. You get to the end of it, and there's a list of cleaning and other works because they've neglected the property in the last couple of months because they've just lost interest.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden, the bond is gone and additional costs come in. Correct. So is that a good tenancy? The history was good, but the finalisation wasn't.
There's so many different aspects to it.
Many people.
And that makes or breaks a deal when it comes down to selling as well. I'll give you an example. We had a property here at 2 Applebox Circuit in Point Cook for a really great price compared to the recent comparable sales. And the renter was really good, had looked after the home really well. There were a few areas where the house needed some attention. Very cooperative tenant or renter. The house needed a bit of paint here and there. The invoice actually went above the bond amount, and he happily contributed towards it.
Yep.
Because he acknowledged that he should have looked after that area, but then, and that made that property went for a lot more higher price because, again, rental provider was not willing to put any works into it at that point. But because of the support they got from the tenant, they were encouraged to put more money into as a backyard.
Yep.
So that certainly made an outcome which was above market value for it. So the benefits of having a great renter is sometimes beyond imagination as well.
Oh, yeah. And a great renter will really offset any perceived differential between the between what they see as being a lower than market rent, and having a better outcome at the other end of it.
Correct.
Because when you look at it, it at least balances itself out because you've got surety of income, you've got quality of maintenance of the property, you've got a tenant who said, yeah, okay, look, I know I messed up, I shouldn't have done this, but in the main, if you have to have a dispute with the tenant, it's going to be a drawn-out process.
Correct.
It's going to go to VCAT, which is going to be variable in their decisions. I think anybody who's been involved in the rental property industry for the last X number of years, as long as I can remember, would say that you're never always going to get what you go after, and particularly at the moment, the inclination is to get even less. Just in terms of the way that the VCAT members seem to be interpreting the legislation and the perception of bias. Yes. So when you weigh all those factors up, you're much better off getting a really outstanding tenant at a rent that's, say, 90 to 95% of market over a period of time. Certainly when they first go into the property, it's at market or 2% below it. But once they're in there, and if they've been there for, say, 2 or 3 years, inspections are perfect or within tolerance are perfect. The rents are paid on time. They're cooperative. They don't get stroppy when it takes more than 24 hours to get a minor maintenance job done.
Yeah.
When you've got a tenant like that and you've got that sort of relationship, you want to foster it and encourage it and let it grow. Exactly. Not have someone come in and tell us what we can set the rent at, because that's an anathema. I mean, that's a short course to contributing to the problem that we've got at the moment. And okay, well, I think we're going to probably. I mean, I'm never a big believer in the hyperbole and the hysteria that the media come out with, but I think we can say pretty safely this is some sort of crisis of housing.
Yeah.
And it's been contributed to by governments of all persuasions
Correct.
over a long period of time. But taxing them out of existence, or taxing what they see as the bottom line profit, and then introducing caps or freezes on the income we derive from it. I'm really sorry, but you're going to see a lot of landlords turn around and go, that 15% that I was talking about earlier that's left the market, that'll double.
Yeah.
Come close to it, because there's already a feeling in Victoria that particularly that property investors don't have as much control over their own private property. The housing, rental housing, is still their private property, as they do in other states. I had a message flash through to me before on LinkedIn from one of my contacts there, who's doing some prospecting. And the message she got back from one of her clients was along the lines of what I just said. No thanks. With what the Andrews government's doing to rental housing in Victoria, I'm not buying here. I'm going interstate. I'm looking at Sydney. So that's an investment we've lost. I'm
actually of the same opinion as well. I was talking to my partner last night, and we were kind of thinking on the lines of investing as well, and it just came in my mind, and I was like, well, even though we can manage our property, we can potentially take care of the initial leasing process very carefully. Do we really want to invest here where, from my view personally, that you're virtually taking someone's fundamental right away of controlling their own asset?
Yep, that's right. Exactly. And these are nobody has bought a property just on a whim.
Correct.
You're not going to go out and spend $500,000 or $600,000 or $800,000 and borrow heavily against it just because it seemed like a good idea.
Exactly, or just because you just want to call yourself an investor.
Exactly. It's a measured decision.
Correct.
And when you're putting that much money in and you are then borrowing against it to fund it, you want to have control over it. Even in the stock market. And I've got money in the stock market. I still, even though I'm watching that plummet at the moment, it's just what shares do at this time of year. But I've still got control over that. I can make a determination as to what that is. The government does not control the dividends that I get from those. And that's effectively what the government is being urged to do, and they haven't ruled it out, which I think is probably a grave error on their part. Until they rule it out, and they've said, "Oh, look, we're not going to rule anything in or out." And I'm going, well, you're really going to stymie the market here. And if you think you've got a crisis now, the longer you do that, the worse it's going to be in the medium term. Not just the short term, but the medium term.
Correct. And it's you don't really need to have a degree to understand that. It's common sense.
Of course it is. But you're dealing with people who are looking at the next electoral cycle and who are making decisions which are, an easy get for them without addressing the hard stuff. You say before, we say it's the COVID debt levy or whatever. No, it's not. It's an imposition of further land tax for a period of 10 years. And I've been around long enough to remember the petrol levy of the early 1990s. And that was supposed to be for a 2 or 3 year period and ended up going for quite a great deal of time longer than that. So, once government gets addicted to a tax, they're not going to wind it back anytime soon. I'm really sorry, but they've got a history of that, particularly a government of this particular flavour. Look, I'm not going to editorialise on that because...
No, it's definitely not pointing towards one government, for sure.
Exactly. I'm looking at the sheer economic weight of this. And the weight of argument here is that if you keep taxing people and then limiting their ability to recoup those taxes, well, you're going to bring yourself undone in a spectacular way.
Yeah,
they've already been.
I actually had a discussion with one of the, without naming the member of parliament, I actually had a discussion with a member of parliament on this one-on-one. We bumped into each other, and I really wanted to have that discussion. It was in me because whenever I saw him, I just wanted to bring this up.
Yep, good.
Had a discussion with him, and the answer I got from him, without much of explanation, Pendulum was on this side many years. Now the government decided to put the pendulum at that side and see how it goes.
Mhm.
That was the answer I got.
That's right. Yep. There's always an overcorrection. Yep. And we need to
Yeah.
get back to the middle.
So why don't we keep it in the middle so you have balance? But no,
Yep.
they wanted to
Right.
try and see how things
Yep.
go on the other side.
Yeah, I know. The unfortunate thing is that ideologically, this government is not in favour of rental properties. Certainly, the Premier doesn't seem to have been at any stage. And I'm wondering whether he might have had a bad experience with an estate agent at some stage in his early youth.
But to an extent that he's, in my opinion, jeopardizing the whole industry.
Yeah, that's right. He is. And he's not just jeopardising the industry, he's jeopardising society.
Correct.
Because this is a society-wide issue. This is not just limited to a particular demographic.
Yeah.
This is a society-wide problem. And if it is not addressed, and not addressed in a measured, balanced way, then he's going to topple the economy over. He thinks he's going to solve the problem. He's actually going to create a bigger one. They need to get out of the ivory tower. I was about to say something else that would have been quite derogatory. They need to get out of their ivory towers and talk to the people on the ground who are actually working this, trying to work this through. Now,
Exactly.
and my view on this is that, look, it's fine to introduce different measures to try to overcome it. It needs to be addressed, but
Correct.
you're disincentivizing landlords and investors
Correct.
from property investment.
Correct.
Why would you do that in the middle of a crisis?
Yeah.
We need to be encouraging supply. We need to be getting investors. And you said it before. It's a good time to be buying an investment property because the prices are down slightly. I mean, what we're probably about 10% off on what we were from the absolute peak about 18 months ago.
Yeah.
The price of supply on the provision of supply is down to that extent. But from a demand point of view, when you flip it around the other way and you say, well, we're now going to lease this property, the prices are up. The prices are high.
Correct.
So it would be really interesting to do a full financial feasibility study on a couple of your properties and just say, this is what we think the rent's going to be. This is what we assume your outgoings are going to be. And that's just, you list all the outgoings, you list things such as your rates, your insurances, your compliance checks, all the other bits and pieces. You list all that and say, based on this, we think that your percentage return, and I'd be pretty certain that your percentage return today is better than your percentage return would have been 18 months ago.
Exactly.
ROI, maybe the ROI is pretty good.
Yeah. And in terms of VCAT, what's new with VCAT right now with the hearings and the outcomes? We got one at the moment, which I'm excited to sort of come back once we have an outcome. We were talking about this in our last session as well.
Yep.
So we had this hearing for urgent repairs in the property not habitable by human beings as well. Kudos to VCAT. I think we got the hearing within a week and a half, which is good. However, the renter decided to go for an adjournment last minute, which was agreed by the VCAT, again, without going into much details. So the next hearing has not been decided yet, so which means the rental provider is still out of pocket and still waiting and can't do anything with the property. Renter's not living in the home. It's pretty much taken over the property. This is how it makes me feel, that you've taken over someone else's property and saying, I'm not leaving.
That's right. Yeah. It's, look, to an extent that could be certainly construed that way. And look, and I don't want to go into too much really detail because you and I have discussed the finer points of this, but we've got, again, a balance to be struck that's not being met. And that is that, and I understand that VCAT members don't want to be seen to be exacerbating the problem by putting people into situations where they are homeless, particularly in the middle of a rental crisis. This particular case that you're talking about does not meet that test because there is alternative accommodation that the renters moved into. But in the main, VCAT is saying, well, the last thing I want to do is create further homelessness issues. That's well and good. But then you're relying on the good faith of the renter to live up to their end of the order that's made.
Yeah.
And in the main, yes, they will, because they understand the importance of being housed.
Yeah.
But there's still going to be a percentage that will try to flout it and game the system and then go back for another hearing and another hearing.
Correct.
And VCAT doesn't seem to take into account that that's a practice that this particular renter is undertaking. I don't know how we push our case further with that, because there seems to be a case that there are members in there with cloth ears. They don't want to listen to reason or argument to demonstrate that. They've gone in there with a particular view in mind, or it appears they've gone in with a particular view in mind, and they're only interested in achieving the outcome that they've already set out to achieve.
Correct.
We've got to be really careful with that as well, because this goes back to what we talked about before with the lack of control that investors feel. They get one or two bad VCAT decisions, they're going to go, you know what, not worth the risk, we're done, see you later.
Correct.
They sell to an owner-occupier, bang, one more property out of the rental market.
Correct.
So this is a multi-pronged approach that we need to take to overcome this, and VCAT need to become more attuned to the real world, the real world situations, rather than being seen as the tenant's easy option. I actually had it said to me many, many, many years ago by someone who was one of my very early mentors. The tribunal for a tenant, you got better odds at the tribunal than you have at the casino. And that's the case, because because we're in a consumer society.
Yeah.
The laws are framed to that, which I understand, because protections need to be given. Because there are unscrupulous operators out there. There are absolutely unscrupulous operators out there. But they're in the very, very vast minority. And unfortunately, virtually all our laws are written to guard against that very small minority of whatever flavour and whatever business or practice it is. But it's being taken too far.
Yes.
At some stage, it needs to come back to common sense, and logic and reason need to be applied, which seem to be lacking.
I was watching one of the videos the other day, and this has always been there. Now the renters have become more vocal about it.
Yeah.
This has been an issue in the past as well, where property managers and the owners used to face a lot of challenges at that point, but now the tenants have become more vocal about having the rights, and perhaps either misusing the rights to the advantage at a level where then they're turning around and saying, we're not getting approved, because for us as an agency, when we are looking at the leasing part of it, we are saying to our landlords, let's just tighten the leasing part so hard that we don't really get anyone in without thorough checks. It's like not letting someone into the club, because once they're inside the clubs, you have to either force them out.
Yep.
The best and easy way is to stop them at the door.
That's right. Yep.
And unfortunately, we are in a position where we have to do it. One little thing, the gut feel comes in and says, now this person may be a future problem. No matter how good the application looks like, and if it doesn't feel right, it ain't right.
Yep. And the thing is, when we're in a situation as we are at the moment, where there is an overwhelming number of applications, I mean, sometimes you can miss it because you're overwhelmed by the checks that you have to do. And you said it before, if you have 10 people go through a rental property, 9 of them are going to apply. You've got 9 applications to try to go through. You can't get through all of those diligently and efficiently within the 24-hour period, because you've got to wait for other people to ring you back. You've got to wait for employees. You've got to wait for other property managers. You've got to, all your checks have got to be done, and there's a process by which you can automate all of that. But you still need to be thorough and diligent and get through all those checks. And occasionally, because of the way the numbers one might slip through. But we've still got a responsibility to the owner. We're talking about properties that are worth $500,000 at a bare minimum.
Correct.
We're being told we can't check the people who are going to move into it thoroughly.
Exactly.
That's a nonsense argument. Would you you're not going to go to a bank and borrow $500,000 without going through the hoops with them.
Yeah. If the bank says, imagine the banks have stopped to check anyone's pay slips.
Watch the banking system implode.
Exactly.
Or interest rates would skyrocket because they'd be looking to offset their risk.
Exactly.
So, yeah, but look, there's no easy answer to this. The thing that really sort of makes me smile about it is that all these people are on their bandwagon now, going, we're being discriminated against. We've got it's that big bad property manager over there. It's all his fault or her fault that we're not getting the property. Well, actually, no, we've just got an abundance of choice. I don't remember hearing this same sort of argument 5-6 years ago when the market was actually around the other way, when there was a lot of supply, rental prices were actually dipping, and you get one or maybe two people turn up to an inspection. They weren't all then turning around going, "Oh, you poor things, you're really doing it tough, aren't you?" Now it's, "Oh, we're doing it tough." So let's have some balance in this argument as well. It's not the property manager who's stopping you getting into the property. It could well be your history as a tenant.
Correct. Exactly. And what person is actually getting the vibe, the way there was a training session I attended. During the training session, it was minute in details how someone's rocking up, how fast they're driving in the street. Are they pulling their car up on nature strip? How clean the car is, and how they. I mean, each and everything was so detailed, and I'm thinking, well, that's going to make a lot of people get declines.
Yep. Exactly, because we look at the conduct that we see. It's like it's no different to applying for a job. You're never going to give someone a bad reference.
Correct.
But you're also going to look at in an employment situation. You're going to look at the way that they approach the other people in the office whilst they're waiting, or as they walk up to the reception desk and talk to the receptionist. How do they approach the receptionist? Equally with property, it's the same. We are gauging their suitability from the moment we see them. We've got to be, because current conduct is an indicator of future conduct.
100%.
Without a doubt, no question, because your character won't change.
Exactly. It might be under the radar, or maybe a little subtle at that point, because you need something at that point. But as human beings, we are really predictable.
Oh, we are. Yeah, we're incredibly predictable. We are creatures of habit and pattern.
Correct.
And if your habit and pattern is, pardon me, turning up to a property, in a pair of stubbies and a pair of thongs when it's a 12-degree winter day, well, look, I'm really sorry. You may not like this, but we are going to judge you on your appearance, because that is an indicator of your ability to keep a property clean. And that is one of the prime covenants of a tenancy agreement, and also the Residential Tenancies Act.
Correct. And when someone says, "I'm ready to move in tomorrow," I'm excited. I want to know more.
That's a red flag. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yep. I can take the property over when it's available, whatever time suits the owner. But if I'm ready to go tomorrow, or I need it tomorrow, I'd be going. I'm digging a lot deeper on this one.
Exactly. Good to know more.
Obviously, these are outlier situations, but the same. It still comes back to our primary duty, and that's to protect and preserve the landlord's investment.
Correct. Exactly. And it also goes down to the conversation where I think it's all connected with each other. One is, of course, the landlord's and rental provider's asset. Second, looking at the workload the property managers have at the moment, with clients and other things, and imagine you have to deal with one argument's sake, let's take one bad or one so-called bad renter, and that takes time away from servicing 100 other good clients.
Yep.
And then the service levels are going down, and you get the blame from the good clients. Well, the service levels go down. You're a nice person, but I'm not getting the service as I used to get.
Yep.
And one person could actually put a hole into your business.
Yeah, that's right.
As well.
Okay. Yep. And then what happens is the property manager gets overloaded.
Yeah.
Works extreme hours, and this is very common. They get hostile reception from landlords and tenants, and they go, "No amount of money in the world's worth this. I'm done. I'm out."
Correct. Property managers start feeling that they are not getting. They don't want to feel rewarded monetarily, but I think they need to feel acknowledged that yes, the work they're putting in, and hats off to the property managers out there.
Oh yeah, been one for 30 years. I know what the job's like, and it can be incredibly rewarding and enjoyable, but it can also have its times when you just think,
correct,
there's no amount of money in the world that would want me to continue doing this. And I would have at least 2 property managers a week that I talk to that say, I'm done. I'm out. I've had enough. I can't tolerate this level of abuse. And sometimes it is absolute abuse.
Yeah.
And hostility and denigration from the people that I'm supposed to be helping when they don't really want to see what else is going on around them. They're not the only client that I've got. But and we like to make, as property managers, we like to make everybody feel as though they are the only person we're dealing with at the time. That's just part of who we are. We are people pleasers. That's our nature.
Exactly.
But it gets to the point where we, as you said, you have one that takes up, the Pareto principle of 80-20. 80% of the people take up 20% of the time, and 20% of the people take up 80% of the time. But we've got to sort of strike a balance. But where you've got one person who's constantly at you asking and needing or demanding attention, it takes away from 150 people that are needing it.
Exactly.
So that creates overwhelm and burnout, and we lose people. And we've lost hundreds of good people from this industry nationwide over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. And same thing goes before we wrap up. We've got about 3 minutes to go, but I'll quickly wrap this up. And I'll say one thing, and it's not just about renters. In our business here, with all due respect to the landlords out there, we are being very careful on who we take on as rental provider as well.
Oh, you should be. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And we had about 7 last week come over, and we had about 9 we decided not to take on.
Yep, good. That's good. That's good selective growth.
Yeah.
I was taught many years ago, you don't need to take on every piece of business that's out there. There is such a thing as bad business. And I was told, and this was by a guy called John Crowder, who was the grandfather of the current Crowder family, and started the business in the 1920s. Turned to me one day when I was having a chat to him about something, expressing my frustration with the client. He said, "We're Crowders, son. We don't do bad business." And he said, "You take that lesson through for the rest of your working life, and you'll have a much better working life." And I went, light bulb.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't take on clients when you can foresee that they're going to be a problem, and there are ways of testing for that.
Exactly. And that's where we will actually have a discussion on that next time, I suppose.
Happy to. Yeah. I reckon that'll be a great conversation to have. So that the property investor, the rental provider, the landlord understands that we're not just going to go crawling after their business because they turn around to us and say, "Hey, we've got a house that we want you to lease." Because
I get a smile on my face when I get a smile on my face when I get buyers come to the open home, and I'm thinking, when I'm selling a property, I'm thinking it's going to be a hard one to deal with them negotiating for the sale. And as soon as they open them, say to me, "Oh, but we'll work out a deal, and you'll be the one who's looking after this management."
And sometimes you just go, "Yeah, thank you, but no."
Yeah. I'm thinking,
And you've got to do that, because otherwise you're going to jeopardise the stability of your other clients, and
correct.
your service levels are going to suffer.
Exactly.
You don't want, when you can look at someone, and yeah, look, you and I have had that same experience. They go, yeah, look, yeah, if you can get the vendor to do it, we'll give you the management. And I'm just going,
Correct.
yeah, nah, sorry,
Yeah.
it's just
Correct.
not going to be worth it. That's all.
Your service levels, if you're good enough, you will become a magnet eventually that people would love to come to you themselves by just doing the right thing. Louis Vuitton is not Louis Vuitton just because they're expensive. It's because there is a point of difference. There's
That's right.
different arguments about someone wearing Louis Vuitton or not. But I suppose Louis Vuitton would not turn around and say, oh, well, someone's come to the shop, let's just reduce the price just to secure the business.
That's right. Of course they wouldn't. Yep. Nobody I know would be doing that. I had someone today inquire about my coaching services, and they said, "Is that, can you do a better price?" I said, "No." I said, because I know what my value is, and
Correct.
we should all be the same. We should all be able to turn around and go, "This is what I'm worth. This is what I'm charging, and these are the very good reasons why I'm charging that amount of money."
Correct.
And if you don't like it, you're free to go somewhere else.
And as a service provider, if you yourself are not sure, and if you're thinking, shall I just reduce it and secure the client, that means you yourself don't have clarity.
That's right. Yep, exactly. And at some point, we've all got to realise what we're worth.
Yeah. Kirk Stafford, thank you so much for your time today.
Really always a pleasure.
Like always. Thank you so much for having or coming over to our show today again, and would love to catch up within a few weeks' time again.
Look forward to it greatly.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a good